Hey everyone! So today I wanted to share a video, a flip through review of the part one of my 2021 Project Life album. So I do 2 albums per year and I try to make sure that those match every 2 years. All 4 of those albums are going to match because I store them in calyx cubbies and I want them to coordinate. So I just got into a new cubby for 2021. So I changed the way that I'm doing these labels and I created the ones for 2021 and 2022 so that they all coordinate just with some stamping, because that's just kind of the style I'm really enjoying right now. So flipping in here, to start out the year, I used this transparency that's a 9 by 12 and just punched holes in it, and added on top here this 2021, which was an add-on from the Stories by the Month kit in January. And I added a little tag here that says 2021. You'll see in this album, I use primarily Ali Edwards products, but I also use products from Paper Person and a few other different shops like Feed Your Craft. For my intro page here, I use this card I think was from Paper Person, and I believe the rest is from Ali Edwards. And I added a cut file here that Ali had provided that was a 2021, and then included a photo of each of us, a family photo, which is what we used for our Christmas cards last year, and then I took a photo of each of the pets. I made all of these photos black and white because they were all taken kind of at different times, and I wanted them to coordinate. And then I added our initials on here in gold. Moving into January. So for January, I got these numbers that were, I believe they were an add-on in the January Stories by the Month. And I thought it'd be super fun because they went 1 through 31 to do all of the days in January. I don't typically do this project daily, but I thought it would just be kind of a fun mix-up. So for the month of January, I have those through my spreads to document something that kind of happened every day. I use the January Stories by the Month primarily on this spread. And you can see I've got some where I cut up photos and made kind of a little collage to include a little bit more. I'm including some, I save newspapers, front pages from today's front page app. And that's just a good way to kind of tell the story of what's going on in the world without having to really journal about it. This week, I believe I'm using the Stories by the Year collection from Ali Edwards. I created a little flip up here. I'm doing some stamping. I try to find some sort of unifying embellishment that I can use across the spread every time. And so for this spread, I went with this stamping and these label stickers. And that just kind of helps tie it all together. Plus I still have the numbers because this is January. Again, I'm using the Stories by the Year collection. I believe I did this one for a Keep It Simple scrapbooking thing that we did for Ali Edwards, and I think that this one had maybe there's a process, I'm not sure. This was on the Ali Edwards blog with a little more details about how I cut up some of the cards just to kind of use them on the spread and have a unifying theme. I created these little story cards that came from a 4x6 card, and then this was also a 4x6 card that I cut. Moving into the last week of January. By this point, I was kind of over the numbers, but I still went ahead and was using them, finishing it up. And I was using this stamping as my unifying theme on this spread. I also include traditional layouts in the middle of my Project Life album. I do create a lot of traditional spreads and put them in other albums, but when they do have to do with current events, I include them in here. I tend to do 9 by 12 or smaller because I like them to be sandwiched between the 12 by 12. So here are 2 of those. Now I don't necessarily put them in the week that I created them. This one was from February and this one was from January, but I just wanted to put them back to back because wherever there's an open spot, I will fill it in. Moving into February. So for this spread, I'm using the February Stories by the Month collection. I really loved these wood veneer words, and a lot of times when I get an embellishment like that, I want to kind of hoard it, but I pushed myself to use them all in this spread, which is really kind of a great way to not just have like one or two pieces lingering in your stash that just end up staying there forever because you forget about them. So for this spread, I use the morning story kit. I really am trying to use the story kits to do one weekly spread in my album. And I really love how that gives me kind of a theme to kind of frame the story. Sometimes I do it when I'm looking back in time, but for this week I did it like I documented during that week. So I was purposefully looking for morning stories. And for the week that just happened last week, so right now it's the very end of September, so it was almost the last week of September, I did the evening story kit, and I'm still putting that one together, but I had a lot of fun looking for evening stories. And that one's also gonna have an insert because I think when I'm looking for the stories, I end up just collecting more photos than I normally do. This spread, I was using the paper person kit for February, which I struggled with. I'm not gonna continue getting those kits anymore starting in October just because they've been piling up. I do really love some of them and I really love Kelly Perky's style, but for whatever reason, I just find them harder to use. So I'm taking a break from those, but I did use it on this spread. I also have these two inserts in here that I did just trying to use up some additional chipboard and kind of having fun with that. Moving into this week, I used the Connect Story Kit. And I really love how Project Life gives you the ability to kind of have like a fresh page each week and come at it from a totally different perspective, because this week is this Kelly Perky kit was very kind of funky and bright colors. And then now in this week, I've got the very muted Connect Story Kit. And I just really love how each week has a whole new opportunity. Moving into March, I used a digital March Stories by the Month kit for this spread. I often forget to use digital products when I'm working on Project Life because I just really love the physical process, but they're so flexible, and that way I'm able to kind of first to type my journaling so I can get more words in here, and then I can manipulate the digital cards so that I can have the right sizes and space to do what I want to do. This spread, I think I'm using quite a bit of Feed Your Craft, and it worked really well with the Ali Edwards Stories by the Month for March. So I'm kind of mixing and matching. And I had a lot of fun just making these, their collections of stickers and chipboard just on these two cards. And it was a fun way to kind of use up some of the pieces and just have a little bit of fun putting it together. Again, using more Feed Your Craft. And then I added in some 9x12 pages here. This one just about, March was a really tough month for me. It was just so busy at work. I work for the government, and that's when our legislative season. So I was working on some legislation. And so I was working some really long hours in March. I mean, long for me. And it was too much. So this kit from Feed Your Craft was like, I don't remember what it's called, but it was about like hard days, real life, whatever, and it worked perfectly for telling that story. And then I didn't have a spread to do on the back of this. Instead, I just put some Valentine's cards that we received and kind of collaged them in there. For this spread, I took inspiration from the Hello Story 2 class, where Ali did a lesson on cut paper, and she had done some cut alphabets, and I thought it would be super fun. So I did that for this spread where I cut out each day of the week and then typed up some journaling. And this again was a super busy week. So a lot of that was about how my work schedule and everything that I was doing. So I added a lot of this like work, busy stamping. And then I put all my photos across the middle, which is a flip from what I normally do. I normally put a lot of photos in the 4x6 pockets and the journaling in 3x4. So it was kind of a fun switch up. And then in this pocket, I did some paper weaving, which was also something I got from that class. This spread, I love it, but it took so long. So I could not do something like that every week. So for this week, I I do this weekly. I generally document everything that happens over the course of the week, but sometimes there's just, some days nothing really big happens, or there's just a few key events, and then I focus on those. So for this week, instead of telling, everyday life stories, I focused on 2 main stories that happened this week. On this side, my husband and I got our COVID vaccines. So I used a kit from Kelly Perky, or Paper Person. I think it was Kelly Perky still at this time. I'm not sure. I used that kit to tell that story about us getting our shots. And then on this side, it was Easter. So we had like a day trip and we did a bunch of things for Easter. So what I did was I just created a journaling card where I listed out the 5 things that we did that day. I used these number chipboards that were on a Stories by the Month kit from April to kind of document the 5 things that we did, the 5 different places that we stopped. And then I let the photos tell the rest of the story. And that way I was able to include a lot of the photos from that day. And then we also did kind of like a fun photo shoot that day, me and my daughter. So I just included some of those here. So this spread, I believe I'm using the Bloom story kit. And this card, this is open up, open up. As soon as I saw that, I knew I needed to do a flip up. So I did it and I used that to journal more about work and how tough that was at this point in time. And then I had a lot of fun trying to use these cork stickers on my photos and just telling kind of some of the stories. I really liked the prompts from these cards where I could just do some like numbered stories. In April, this one I'm using kind of a mix of kits. Every once in a while, I really like to not pull from my current kits and just kind of dig back through my stash. Otherwise, those things will sit there forever. So like this is from Kelly Perky. This is a really old Studio Calico card. It has the rounded corners and I love it, but I don't want the rounded corners. So what I did was I cut it in half and I put half here as an embellishment and half here and created my own journaling card to kind of just journal about what we did on Sunday. And this is some art. This is someone I follow on Instagram, Bless the Messy. And I have followed quite a few artists on Instagram, and a lot of times I will screenshot their art and I will save it to include it in my album as, something that I found that week that was really kind of speaking to me. This one is using the June Stories by the Month kit. So I know this is April, but those kits, the colors kind of work, especially if you're in the same season. And because I'm on the creative team, I need to do my projects before that actual month. So I was working on April at that time and it worked out perfectly. A lot of the kits are so flexible and easy to use that I really didn't have any issue using them in a different month, but you'll see that a lot in my album. And that's why I do that. Again, using screenshots of the front page. We also watch the Oscars every year and try to watch all of the Oscar nominees. It's just kind of a thing my husband and I do. So I created ballots for us, or I printed them off the internet and include those in here. And then in between these, I made a spread using the Bloom story kit to show kind of our front yard blooming. Then moving into May. So for this spread, I used just, again, bits and pieces from my stash. You can see some Paper Person in here. There's some Allie Edwards. Those are really the 2 main shops that I pull from. I didn't have a ton of stories this week, so I decided to create this card in Photoshop Elements that has reading and watching from 2 older story stamps, the digital versions. And then I included some cover images of the book I was reading and 2 movies that we watched this week. And these are really easy just to find on a Google image search. For this spread, I am using more the May Stories by the Month kit and some Kelly Perky still. And then I have this insert in here. So I had created this page right here using the digital May Stories by the Month kit to cut this rainbow out and just kind of tell stories of right now. But when I was working on this spread, after I completed, I realized I kind of wanted to pair some photos with it. But I didn't want to do a whole bigger page. So I just made this tiny, I think it's 2.5 by 8.5. and I included 3 photos and then made a little collage in here for me moments to kind of go with that. And I didn't have a page protector this size, of course, so I just cut one down and sewed it with my sewing machine. And then on the back, I just told a story that went with this week and just kind of made it fit that size. And I think it's kind of fun to mix and match the page protectors, and just a reminder that you don't have to be constrained by the sizes that they sell. You can make whatever size works for you. And then on the back here, I just did a very simple page to document my daughter's 16th birthday. I didn't really tell very much of the story on this page because I'm going to tell more of that story in her album. And it was also during a week in the life, so there's a lot in that album. So this was Week in the Life. So Week in the Life, I do an entirely separate album for, but I don't want to ignore it during Project Life, but I also don't want to have to repeat what I've done. And I actually love documenting Week in the Life in this album because all those stories and photos have already been captured somewhere. So I have the flexibility to kind of include whatever I feel like, and I don't feel like I'm missing anything and if I leave out any of the stories or photos. So what I decided to do this year was I just included a bunch of ephemera that I collected over the week, and ended up not using any of it in my actual Week in the Life album because that album got just too chunky to include any ephemera. So I thought this was a great place to use it. And then these cards had just been sitting in my stash forever from Studio Calico. I think they're very cute, but normally I wouldn't be able to just devote this much space to those cards. I guess you could use them as like flip ups and have journaling behind them, but this was a great way to just kind of be like, oh, this is the whole week, but I don't really have to do any journaling. And then I just added this one card from the Anne story kit just to tell just like the highlights of the week, so that was still in this album. Here I'm using the July Stories by the Month kit. I love this kit. The summer Stories by the Month kits I think are always my favorite, which summer is always my favorite month, or is my favorite season, so that makes sense. But I just had so much fun with this spread, and I kind of want another one of that same kit to play with again. And then here I'm using the August Stories by the Month kit, also another favorite. I had a lot of fun with this one. And when I was putting this spread together, what I did was I was using jelly plates, and I had been doing it for some other projects around this time. So I decided to just do some jelly printing, and you can see it here. And I used that to create backgrounds, and then printed all of my photos as 4x4 squares and created this kind of embellishment cluster on each one. And it just has a little bit of a fun texture because I don't normally include like painting and stuff in this album. So this spread is about a weekend trip that we took to Vermont, and I do have a process video for this one on my on my YouTube and my Instagram. A lot of my spreads, I do have process videos on my Instagram, my IGTV. I haven't been making them. I just started my YouTube, so this is the only one that's on my YouTube, but I will have more from future albums in the future. I do typically do a Monday through Sunday week in this album. However, I will adjust the dates. So this ended up being only 3 days because that was when we went on this vacation. And I didn't want to mix vacation weekend with other everyday life photos because the vacation obviously would kind of take over the spread. And this way I get the full spread to devote to all of these photos and stories. And I used the travel collection from this year from Ali Edwards and on that spread. Here, this is just a very simple spread. Not really a lot happened this week. I didn't have a ton of journaling. I journaled about one day that we did some stuff, and then I just did kind of a list journaling and filled the rest in. Sometimes it's nice to just have a very simple spread in the middle here. This one, I just used a bunch of bits and pieces, a lot of pieces from both Paper Person and Ali Edwards. This is when my daughter's getting vaccinated. Finally, she wasn't old enough before when we did it. So I have this vaccinated card from the Paper Person shop, and then her little time slip thing. And then for the embellishments, I use these stars from Studio Calico, paired with some stitching and chipboard to kind of have a uniform embellishment across the spread. And then some of these labels also from Studio Calico to add a little bit of journaling. So this spread I'm using the Together story kit, and I had a lot of extra stories here. There's some cat hair sticking to her. I had a lot of extra stories that didn't fit, so I did do a flip up so I could add some extra stuff in here. And that's something I do frequently when I have like a few extra photos, but I don't want to do a full insert. I also kind of layered some photos here just to get a little bit more into the spread. And then this one is using the Teach story kit. There is a process video for this one in the Teach story kit classroom. And I go through kind of how I put together this spread. There's a full process video for that. And then this spread, this is just the 28th through the 30th because I really like to end this first album at the end of June and start the next one with July. We typically go to Cape Cod the first week of July, and it's the 4th of July, so that's usually the first spread in there. This year we went a little bit later, but I still wanted to kind of stick with my routine of ending on June 30th, which is also our wedding anniversary. So I document a bit of that. And then on the back side here, I just included this paper from the Paper Person shop because I think it's just a pretty paper, and you know, that way it just fills in the pockets and makes it more complete. So I hope that you enjoyed this flip through of my album. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments, and thanks for watching.